Hello, everybody. I'm George Myland. Well, thank you for coming back to the channel. This is about Israeli terrorism in the West Bank. Now, the United States ambassador to Israel, Mick Huckabee, denounced this as terrorism last month. And there have been numerous reports about this from the US government, from various human rights organizations, about the ongoing Israeli terrorist attacks against Palestinian civilians in the West Bank. And Hamas is not in the West Bank. Hamas was created by Israel in the 1980s to weaken and divide the Palestinian freedom movement, particularly to undermine the Palestinian Liberation Organization, of which Yasser Arafat was chairman for a while. His faction was Fatah, as in victory, and Hamas was never part of the PLO, which was a coalition of different factions. So Mike Huckabee, a Trump appointee, he denounced this terrorism, noting it particularly targets Christians. Now, 5% of Palestinians are Christians. I wish that was known to the Christian fundamentalists in the USA, who are usually crazy Zionists and viscerally anti-Palestinian, racist against Arabs in general, Islamophobes, and so forth. But whether this violence was targeting Muslims or Christians or both, I don't care. Clearly, it's wrong. We hear a lot about Hamas terrorism, but very little about Israeli terrorism carried out in the West Bank, the illegally occupied West Bank. The West Bank is not part of Israel. Even Israel says it's not part of Israel. It is Palestinian territory. So Israel claims its legitimacy comes from a United Nations Security Council resolution 1948 to create it, which allotted 1/3 of the historic land of Palestine to the Arabs, and that includes the West Bank. Now, Tel Aviv has tried to label this Judea and Samaria to muddy the waters, to say it's disputed. Well, it's not very disputed. There's only one country, Israel, which has any idea that it might be Israeli sovereign territory, but even they haven't annexed it. So there are film footage coming out continually as photos, as testimony of Palestinians who are murdered by these Israeli illegal immigrants, because when they're living in Palestine against the will of the Palestinian people, without the permission of the Palestinian Authority, that is illegal immigration. And the US government, particularly under Trump, is very, very against illegal immigration unless it's into Palestine. What do they think about those who come illegally to the United States? That they're absolutely evil, have no right to be thrown out, humiliated as much as possible, even if they came across the border as babies and they've been there for decades. But even if they've never done anything wrong. But Israelis who are living illegally in the West Bank, who are murdering Palestinian civilians, that's A-OK by the US government, which will fund them and arm them and so on. So the Israeli army, the Israeli police will often be there witnessing these crimes, witnessing the cruelty, the beatings, the humiliation, the armed robbery of Palestinians, and at best do nothing, often actively participate. It's sickening racist violence, just the dehumanization of the Palestinians. You can see how infuriating it is to drive them out of their homeland. So no one should be mistreated for his or her ethnicity, race, and so on, right? So that includes Jews, Muslims, Christians, people of any religion. That includes Jews, whether you define them by ethnicity or by faith, by Palestinians, all Arabs, by non-Arabs, anybody, all right? It ought to go without saying. I'm afraid it bears repetition. Wow. So it really is just appalling. Israelis can carry out terrorism there as well, as Huckabee said. Okay, and he claims that some of these people were thugs and so forth. So it's just appalling what's going on. Destroying their graveyards, their olive trees, harassing them, beating them up when they're trying to harvest things, so that they'll be forced to flee. That so many of them will go to Jordan and claim Jordanian citizenship. So it's ethnic cleansing, and the Israeli government does nothing about it at best if they don't actually carry out these appalling crimes against the Palestinian people, just as this terrible situation is still going on in Gaza. So it's heartbreaking. It's also infuriating that there's such injustice, and yet the United States, it provides funding to Israel, a very wealthy country. It sells its best weapons to Israel. It wields its United Nations Security Council veto in Israel's favor. The US has used its veto more in favor of Israel than it has of itself. This really is astonishing, the hold that Zionists have over the US body politic. And that is not an alias for Jews. A lot of Jews are not Zionists. The most religious Jews are anti-Zionists, and most Zionists are not Jewish. Most of them are Christian, particularly Christian fundamentalists, as I pointed out. So it's very, very sad, and you can see these ongoing human rights abuses, and people want to put that right. So it's absolutely flagrant what's going on. You can read any report you like by Human Rights Watch, by Amnesty International. You can read the United Nations' own reports by Francesca Albanese, the United Nations Special Rapporteur for Human Rights there, and that's why she has an obligation to write about this. And people say, well, look at Sudan, look at Nigeria. Okay, we should talk about that. There are terrible human rights abuses there. There are murders of civilians, and those also need to be exposed. Why so much focus on Israel? I suppose partly the proportion of the people in Gaza who've been murdered by the IDF, and the fact that Western governments, particularly the United States, are aiding and abetting this with weapons shipments, but also from places like Italy or Germany, or till recently the United Kingdom. And because their governments usually don't denounce these crimes, whereas they do denounce them if they're committed in Sudan or if they're committed in Nigeria by terrorist organizations like Boko Haram. Goodness. So yes, obviously I would like a nation to be able to defend itself. That includes Palestine as well as Israel. Palestine to be secure within its own borders, to have a viable state, okay, and not a moth-eaten state, not a state with a lot of illegal settlements there, with a lot of enemy troops occupying it. This is the so-called offer which has come from Tel Aviv time and again. Remember, Jerusalem to be a shared capital as the United Nations said. So therefore, much of Jerusalem belongs to Palestine. That's the capital of Palestine. It's the capital of Israel. I don't mind if it is. Some countries recognize it as that. But obviously, the Palestinians have to be able to use it as well. And I don't care that it's mentioned in the Bible where it's not mentioned in the Quran. That is the international capital of Palestine. Palestine recognized by, I think, 153 countries. People say, where are the borders of Palestine? Well, you can go by the borders of 1967 or the borders of 1948. There it is. Loads of countries have got disputed territories. Where is Pakistan? Where is India? Does Jammu and Kashmir belong to India or Pakistan, or partly to both, or to neither, or what? Whatever, even though that is unclear, there's no question that India is a sovereign state, and so is Pakistan. Many countries have disputed borders, so territorial disputes do not delegitimize a nation state. So Palestine is a nation by almost any definition. If they want to be part of Jordan, and the Jordans wish to accept them, so be it. If they wish to be part of Egypt, the Egyptians wish to absorb them into Egypt, that's fine. But they don't. And so that's not happening. So all these attempts to change the subject to say that Palestinians don't exist is absolutely preposterous. Palestinian nationality has been around, well, for at least a century. Even people like Golda Meir had a Palestinian passport issued to her, right? I saw lies by Ben Shapiro that Palestine was never Muslim territory. Well, it was from about the 7th century AD until the 20th century. And even after the expulsion of Jews from Judea, there was always a Jewish community there. Even Napoleon passed through around about 1798. It was about 5% Jewish or something. Anyway, I wish there would be peace and that no one would suffer racial or religious violence. Peace now.